Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep, really deep into the world of textile conservation.
That's right. We're talking about everything from ancient fabrics to, the kind of synthetic materials we see today.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty incredible field. I mean, think about it. We're trying to preserve these fragile pieces of history, and we've got this amazing collection of research that goes into like the very makeup of these textiles.
Like what they're made of, how they break down, and even the techniques.
The techniques used to save them. And then there's even like the bigger questions around how we should be approaching this whole process, the ethics of it all.
That's right. We're going to be looking at it all, from the basic fibers to the actual methods
The methods that make sure these these fragile objects
for
last.
future generations.
Mm.
Yeah. It really is this blend of like science, history, and just a passion for preserving our heritage.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. So let's start with the basics. What are these textiles made of?
Well, our sources really emphasize natural fibers.
Okay, so like the building blocks that have been used for centuries.
Exactly. And we can broadly divide those into plant-based or vegetable fibers and then animal fibers.
Okay, so let's start with the plants.
All right. So when we talk about plant fibers, I think cotton is probably the most familiar.
Right.
It comes from the cotton plant,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that the cotton fiber, it actually evolved to help hold moisture for the plant's seeds.
Huh.
And that natural absorbency, it kind of stays with the fabric even after processing, which is why cotton's so good at soaking up liquids.
Right. It's great for towels and things like that.
Exactly.
But as anyone who's ever like done laundry knows,
Yeah, it can wrinkle.
wrinkle, it shrinks.
Oh, it shrinks too. Absolutely
Yeah,
right.
I can yellow over time too. Our sources mentioned that.
Yes, it can.
Yeah.
And then, moving on, we have flax, which gives us linen.
Linen. Okay. So how is that different from cotton?
It's quite different. So flax comes from the flax plant,
Mm.
and it goes through this process called retting to become linen fabric. One of the beautiful things about linen is that it has this natural shine, this luster.
I love that. Yep.
It's beautiful. And that comes from waxes that are naturally within the flax and the smooth surface of the fibers themselves.
Huh.
And then it's also known for its strength, its absorbency, although it does dry quickly.
So that's why it feels so cool to the touch.
Exactly. That's why it's so
Okay.
great in the summer.
Yeah, perfect for warm weather. But it sounds like it might have its own challenges when it comes to preserving it.
It does. Yeah, linen fibers don't have a lot of give, so it wrinkles very easily.
Oh, yeah.
And perhaps more importantly, for long-term preservation, those repeated sharp creases can actually weaken the fibers and cause them to break.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so proper storage is so important for these types of textiles.
It really is. Okay, so we've talked about cotton, we've talked about flax.
Right.
Now let's move on to the animal fibers. What are the big ones there?
Well, the two main animal fibers are wool and silk.
Okay, so wool, like that classic warm and cozy feeling.
Exactly. Wool is mostly made of a protein called keratin.
That's the same stuff our hair and nails are made of, right?
That's right, the very same. And it's a fantastic insulator. It traps air really well, keeping you warm. And wool can actually absorb a significant amount of moisture, up to a third of its own weight.
Wow, really?
Yeah, without even feeling wet to the touch. However, it's not a particularly strong fiber,
I can imagine.
and it becomes even weaker when it's wet.
That's why I have to be so careful with wet woolens, right?
Exactly. You got to treat them gently. Now,
Mhm.
the elasticity of wool comes from its crimped, like wavy structure. But the surface of each fiber, it has these tiny overlapping scales.
Uh-huh.
And if you combine moisture, heat, and friction, those scales can lock together, resulting in felting.
Oh, so that's what happens when a sweater shrinks and gets all matted.
Exactly, that irreversible shrinkage.
Fascinating. Okay, so let's talk about silk. I mean, silk always feels so luxurious.
It does. Silk comes from the silkworm larva, and it spins this cocoon made of a single continuous filament.
Really, one long, continuous thread.
It's incredible, isn't it?
That's amazing.
And that filament, it's mostly made of a protein called fibroin, and it's coated in this sticky gum called sericin.
Oh,
To make silk thread, you have to unwind filaments from several cocoons and combine them.
okay.
And even though silk is incredibly fine, it's actually quite strong.
Interesting.
And it's a good insulator. It can absorb moisture. It shares some characteristics with both wool and linen.
Okay, so what makes it so unique, particularly when it comes to preservation?
Well, like wool, silk weakens when it's wet.
Hmm.
But unlike wool, it doesn't have much elasticity. It's also very sensitive to light, especially if it's exposed for a long time.
And that can cause it to fade or even break down?
Exactly. and it doesn't have those scales that cause felting like wool does.
Okay, so they're all natural fibers, but they're all very different when it comes to conservation.
Absolutely. Each one needs a special approach.
So we've talked about these basic materials. How do these individual fibers then actually become the fabrics we see and wear?
Well, that's where weave structures and other textile techniques come in. Our sources highlight three main weave types: plain weave, twill weave, and satin weave.
Okay, so plain weave, that's the most basic, right?
It is. It's a simple over-under
Mm.
pattern. Think of like a piece of cheesecloth or just your standard cotton sheet.
Right, that classic grid pattern.
Exactly. Then there's twill weave, which creates this diagonal rib.
So like denim jeans.
Yeah, denim's a great example. And then finally, we have satin weave, which is characterized by these long yarns that float over several warp yarns before being tied down.
And that creates that smooth, shiny surface.
That's right, the classic satin sheen.
Beautiful. But how does the way a fabric is woven affect how it holds up over time? I mean, does the weave really matter that much for preservation?
Oh, it matters a lot.
Okay.
With satin, for example, those long floating yarns are more exposed, so they're more prone to snagging and abrasion.
Oh, I see.
If a thread breaks or is pulled, it can really change how the fabric looks, its sheen, even its color.
And those kinds of damages are really hard to fix, right?
They can be,
Yeah.
sometimes even impossible to fix seamlessly. Then you have pile fabrics, like velvet,
Oh, velvet.
with those raised loops or cut ends.
Right.
They're easily crushed or distorted, and those marks are very noticeable.
Yeah, you can definitely see those crushed areas on velvet.
Exactly. And another important thing to remember with woven fabrics is that they stretch the most on the bias. That's the diagonal direction of the weave.
Oh, interesting. I've never really thought about that.
So garments cut on the bias, they drape beautifully,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also more likely to stretch out of shape if they're not stored properly.
Makes sense. So the way we store these things is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And our sources also touch on some other ways of making textiles,
Oh, right. Beyond just those three basic weaves.
right? So you have things like crocheting, lace making, netting,
Wow.
and these techniques, they create fabric by leaping or knotting threads together, not by interlacing warp and weft-like weaving.
Okay, so very different structure.
Very different.
Yeah.
And these methods, particularly netting and lace, often result in these really open, delicate structures.
So they'd be more susceptible to snagging or tearing?
Exactly.
Oh,
More delicate, more prone to damage.
okay. So we've talked a lot about these natural fibers and how they're put together. But what about synthetics? They're everywhere these days.
You're absolutely right, they are. And while our sources focus primarily on natural fibers, especially because of their historical significance and prevalence in museum collections,
Right.
it's important to remember that synthetic textiles are definitely a part of textile conservation today.
Okay.
I mean, conservators are dealing with everything from, ancient linen to 20th century polyester.
Wow. So even those relatively modern fabrics, they need conservation too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They can degrade, they can become fragile. And in the 20th century, we saw all these new chemical and mechanical processes being used to change the properties of fibers,
Oh, interesting.
both natural and synthetic.
Okay.
And these modifications, they were done for different reasons, like improving how the fabric looks or feels.
Right.
Or even adding functional properties like water resistance or making them flame retardant.
Right. So it's not just about the fiber itself anymore. There could be all these other things added to it.
Exactly. So you have things like weighting silk,
Oh, to make it drape better?
right? Or the creation of moire silk
Right.
with that wavy pattern.
Yeah.
And what's really important for conservation is that some of those early synthetic textiles can actually degrade over time. They can develop acidity within their structure.
And that makes them fragile.
Extremely fragile. So it's a
Yeah.
whole other set of challenges for conservators.
Wow. It's amazing how much goes into just understanding these different materials.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know what textiles are, we know how they're made, but why is preserving them so important?
Well, textiles, they hold this huge significance. They can be incredible artistic achievement.
Oh, absolutely.
Like think about the skill it takes to weave tapestries or embroider intricate designs.
It's amazing.
Our sources mention examples like silk textiles with coats of arms on them, testaments to the level of textile artistry in the past.
So they're not just functional, they're art.
Exactly. And beyond the artistic merit, they offer these amazing insights into daily life and social history.
Oh, how so?
Well, archaeological finds, like textiles recovered from burial sites, can tell us so much about how people dressed in the past, what materials they
So,
used.
like, we're connecting with the people who wore those clothes centuries ago.
Exactly. It's really powerful. And ultimately, preserving textiles, it's part of safeguarding our cultural heritage.
Right, because it's more than just the object itself, it's the stories and memories attached to them.
Exactly. And that's where we're seeing more and more community involvement in these conservation efforts.
It's recognizing that these objects have value beyond just the material.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about the actual conservation techniques. What happens when these fragile textiles need, some intervention?
Yeah, what do conservators do?
Well, the treatments vary depending on the textile, of
Yeah,
course,
right.
but cleaning is often a very important first step. This might involve wet cleaning,
Using water.
yes, but very carefully controlled deionized water.
Okay.
And sometimes, if there are concerns about contamination, like with archaeological finds, a mild disinfectant might be added.
That makes sense, especially for things that have been buried for a long time.
Exactly. And gentle handling is absolutely key during wet cleaning. Conservators often support the fabric as it's being moistened,
Oh, wow.
and they arrange it according to its weave structure as it dries to minimize any stress. They might use blotting techniques and cold air drying.
So no harsh chemicals.
Things like surface active agents are avoided unless they're absolutely necessary because they can be damaging.
Got it. So it's all about being really gentle and controlled.
Precisely.
What about dry soil and dust? How do you clean those up?
For that, they use mechanical cleaning methods,
Okay.
very carefully applying soft brushes and gentle vacuum suction, sometimes even through a fine mesh screen to protect the fabric.
Wow, they really take their time.
They do. And for more stubborn soiling, like old glue or starch, controlled soaking in lukewarm water or using specific enzymes might be considered.
So it's like a constant balancing act between cleaning and potentially damaging the fibers.
Exactly. Every decision has to be carefully considered.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about textiles that have become really weak or have tears or holes? How are those supported?
Well, support is crucial. One common technique is using a secondary support fabric,
Okay.
like a fine silk crepe line. And this can even be dyed to match the original fabric.
That's clever.
It helps blend it in. And the textile might be mounted onto a rigid board,
Okay.
often made of a stable material like polycarbonate. And then it's carefully attached to the support fabric using conservation stitching.
Conservation stitching. That sounds incredibly specialized.
It is. It involves specific hand stitching techniques using conservation-grade threads.
But they have to use very specific needles too, right?
They do. It's all very precise. And in some cases, those standard stitching techniques might be adapted or even abandoned in favor of more delicate approaches.
To prevent further damage.
Exactly. And sometimes they even use a grid of threads as a temporary guide to make sure everything is aligned correctly.
Wow, it's really meticulous work. What about holes or missing pieces? Can those be filled in?
In some cases, yes. They might carefully fill those areas with compatible materials, like a linen canvas.
It's almost like textile surgery.
It is, in a way. And then you have specific challenges, like with weighted silk.
Right, we talked about that earlier. It can be so fragile.
Extremely fragile. Conserving those types of textiles requires a lot of specialized knowledge and skills.
That's incredible. It's amazing how much expertise goes into conserving these objects. But what about preventing damage in the first place? How do museums protect these fragile fabrics from just, falling apart over time?
Preventative conservation is huge in museum settings. It involves controlling the environment really carefully and using proper storage and handling techniques.
Okay, so what are the biggest factors they have to control?
Well, light is a major one, especially ultraviolet radiation, or UV.
Right.
It can weaken fibers and make them brittle. And visible light, it can cause fading of dyes and degradation of the material.
So that's why museums often have dim lighting and special glass cases?
Exactly. They have to follow very strict guidelines about light levels, UV filtration, and even infrared radiation.
Wow.
And then temperature is also a critical factor.
Makes sense.
High temperatures can really speed up the deterioration process in organic materials.
Especially with delicate textile.
Exactly. Especially things like weighted silk and those older cellulosic materials like cotton and linen.
So they have to keep the temperature stable and cool.
Absolutely.
And what about humidity?
Humidity is also super important.
I can imagine.
Fluctuations in humidity can cause fibers to expand and contract, which puts stress on them and can lead to deformation.
Right, it's all about keeping things stable.
Exactly. So they aim for a very specific relative humidity, usually around 55 to 60%.
So it's a really carefully controlled environment.
Yeah.
What about how the textiles are stored?
Proper storage is vital. As we talked about with the bias-cut garments, incorrect storage can lead to permanent stretching.
Right.
So museums use specialized storage solutions,
Like what?
acid-free boxes, padded supports. They're very careful about how they roll or fold textiles to minimize stress and prevent creases.
Oh, I see. So just like you'd carefully store delicate books or documents?
Exactly. Even things that seem small, like folding something the wrong way, can create creases that weaken the fibers over time.
Wow, so much to consider. It's amazing the level of detail and care that goes into all of this.
It really is.
Yeah.
And underlying all these preventative measures is just the fundamental importance of handling textiles very carefully.
Of course, but what does that mean in practice?
It means minimizing physical forces, because those forces can cause all sorts of damage. Tears, holes, distortions, loss of fibers.
So every time they're moved or examined, it has to be done with extreme care.
Absolutely. Okay, finally, let's talk about the ethical side of textile conservation.
Right, because it's not just about the technical skills, is it?
It's not. The field has really evolved in how it approaches these ethical questions. There's a big emphasis now on minimal intervention,
Meaning?
doing only what's absolutely necessary to stabilize the object and prevent further deterioration.
So not trying to make it look brand new again.
Exactly. It's about preserving what remains. And when they do have to intervene, there's this ethical imperative to use materials that are as different as possible from the originals.
So that you can clearly see what's been restored or repaired.
Right. And if they have to use the same materials, they document everything in detail.
So that future conservators know what's original and what's not.
Exactly. Transparency is key. And there are even ongoing debates about how much cleaning and restoration should be done.
Like, are there times when it's better to leave things as they are?
Some people argue that preserving those signs of wear and tear is important. They're part of the object's history.
It's like each object has its own story, and we don't want to erase those chapters.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And even the way objects are displayed can raise ethical questions.
Oh, how so?
Well, sometimes the best way to conserve an object might conflict with wanting to make it accessible to the public. So it's about finding the right balance.
It sounds like it takes a lot of careful consideration and judgment.
It does. It really is this amazing combination of material science, historical understanding, and ethical responsibility.
It's really fascinating. So as we've learned, textile conservation is this incredibly complex and multifaceted field.
That is.
It requires understanding these incredibly diverse materials and appreciating the historical context. And then there are all these ethical considerations that go into every decision.
Absolutely.
It's really quite remarkable.
It is. And the things we learn from delving into textile conservation, they not only help us protect these objects.
But they give us this amazing glimpse into the past.
They do.
It's a way of connecting with history in a very tangible way. And we hope that this deep dive has piqued your interest.
We hope it's given you a new appreciation for this delicate art and science.
So, what aspects of textile conservation did you find most intriguing?
What questions do you still have?
Keep exploring. It's a fascinating field.
It really is.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.